Some things are buried for a reason, and when they surface, they never go back. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. Welcome to the no sleep zone. Great. Here is a full-length, dark, atmospheric horror story written in the style you requested. Slow, suspenseful, Texas-rooted, and ending with psychological and paranormal terror. The title, as you requested, is simply one horror story. They called it Dead Horse Bend. It was a crook in the Guadalupe River, deep in the hill country of Texas, where the water turned sharp around. A jut of limestone and a grove of cypress trees that had been there longer than any living soul could remember. The road that wound nearby FM 311 ran narrow and cracked, flanked by rusting barbed wire fences and empty cattle fields that hadn't seen a head of livestock since the Reagan administration. There wasn't a town. Not exactly, just a collection of dusty trailer homes, a shuttered feed store, and a half-gone gas station where the sign still said 79 cents a gallon. Folks who lived near Dead Horse Bend didn't much care for outsiders, and outsiders never came on purpose. It wasn't on any real map. The only people who ended up there were the kind who wanted to disappear, or the kind who already had. Wesley Stokes was neither. He was just tired. 30-4, divorced, and unemployed since February. He'd spent the last 5 months holed up in a moldy duplex in San Marcos, watching the light go out of his own eyes in the bathroom mirror, the weight falling off his frame in ragged chunks. The day he got the call about his mother, collapsed at church, ambulance couldn't save her, he didn't cry. He didn't even really feel. He just stood in the parking lot of the Heb and let the sun beat down on the crown of his head. Like judgment. She'd moved out to a property near Dead Horse Bend 5 years ago. Said the city was poisoning her soul, that she'd found a place where God could speak to her clearly. Wesley hadn't visited. She'd invited him a few times, sent blurry pictures of the river and the cedar grove out back, but something about the tone of her letters had unnerved him. Long stretches of run-on scripture, references to the watchers in the woods, and repeated mentions of a great reckoning that was coming soon. He'd chalked it up to age or loneliness or the menopause madness his dad used to joke about, but now, as he packed a duffel bag and got on the highway, something sat heavy in his chest. The drive took him 4 hours. The house was farther out. Then he remembered, past Blanco, then west past a ghost town called Twin Bluffs, where the main street had more coyotes than people. By the time he reached the gravel drive marked with a leaning wooden sign that said, Stokes Farm, in God's hands, the sun was already slipping behind the cypress trees. The house was small, 1 story, and sagging at the corners. The roof looked like it had been chewed on. The porch steps were half rotted. There were wind chimes made of bones, real ones. Chicken, maybe, or squirrel. He didn't want to ask. The front door creaked open before he could knock. The man who stood there wasn't someone he recognized. Wesley, the man said. He was old, in that dried-out, stretched leather way you only saw in desert places. Skin like paper, eyes too bright. He smiled without teeth. You look just like her. Wesley blinked. I'm sorry, do I know you? I helped your mother during her final days, the man said. I'm Brother Harlan. She would have wanted me to welcome you. Right, Wesley said, shifting uncomfortably. Well, I'm just here to clear things out. Funeral's being handled back in San Marcos. Harlan nodded slowly. The dead don't always stay where you plant 'em, son. Not out here. Wesley didn't know how to respond to that. The man turned and shuffled back inside, leaving the door open behind him. The house smelled like cedar oil and rot. There were Bibles stacked on every flat surface, but they weren't normal Bibles, at least not the kind Wesley remembered from childhood. These were black-covered, hand-bound volumes filled with strange symbols and scratchy handwriting. The coffee table was carved with circles and runes. The walls were covered in crosses, but they were upside down. This is all new, he muttered, looking around. She was preparing, Harlan said. Your mama was a soldier in the final war. Wesley didn't want to talk to the old man anymore. He moved down the hall toward the bedroom, hoping to find some closure, some keepsake, maybe even a photograph. What he found instead was something far worse. The room was pitch black. No windows, no bulbs in the ceiling socket. He clicked his lighter to get some light, and the flame showed a circle drawn on the floor in what looked like ash. Inside the circle were bones. Animal, mostly. Raccoons, snakes, birds. But in the center was something that looked awfully human. A hand, dried to blackened leather. The skin on the fingers was tattooed with runes. Wesley turned and ran outside, bile rising in his throat. Harlan was gone. The night air was thick, and the trees whispered in a way trees shouldn't. He stood by the river, trying to calm down, when he heard it, a faint whinny, coming from the bend. It was a horse. But it wasn't alive. It came out of the water, slick and bloated, with empty sockets where eyes should be. Its legs moved wrong, like it was remembering how to walk. Water poured from its gaping mouth as it opened and closed, like chewing on something that wasn't there. Wesley backed up, tripped, fell. When he looked up again, the thing was gone. He barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the hooves, soft and wet, outside the house. Sometimes he heard his mother's voice, whispering in a language he didn't understand. In the morning, he tried to leave. The truck wouldn't start. Battery was fine, gas tank full. But when he turned the key, all he got was a static hiss, like a radio picking up some old broadcast. He thought he heard his name in the static. He started walking down the road. 5 miles later, he was back at the house. He hadn't turned, hadn't looped, but somehow he was back at the bend. The water was still. The horse stood halfway in. The river, watching him. That night, he read one of the black books. He doesn't remember doing it, but in the morning his hands were stained with ink, and the symbols had been scrawled onto the walls. He dreamed of cypress roots growing through his stomach, of his mother with her mouth sewn shut, nodding slowly as something stood behind her, tall and thin and without a face, its head brushing the ceiling. On the third day, the phone rang. It was his own voice on the other end. You have to bury her, it said. Deep, where the roots won't reach. He found the grave near the river, but it was empty. The casket had been split open from the inside. There were hoof prints in the mud leading into the bend. On the 5th day, Brother Harlan came back. She was the first gate, he said. You're the second. Wesley didn't argue. He didn't speak. He just picked up the black book and began to write. They found him 6 weeks later. The house was abandoned, windows shattered, doors hanging open. The local sheriff said it looked like a meth lab explosion. Bodies of small animals everywhere. Cryptic writing on the walls, symbols carved into the wood with nails. They never found Wesley, but they say sometimes if you drive down FM 311 near sunset, you'll see a figure standing by the bend, not waving, just watching. Waiting. And if you hear the horse, you'd best not stop. Stop. It started with a knock at the door, just after 3 a.m., when the world outside the farmhouse was nothing but a smear of moonlight across dry brush and twisted oaks, when the coyotes had gone quiet and even the bugs had stopped their droning. Knock, then silence. Henry Layton sat up in bed, heart already racing. The old dog at the foot of the bed, Jasper, half blind and deaf as a stone, didn't stir. But Henry had heard it, clear as anything. One knock. Not frantic, not polite, just ... A sound sharp and hollow like bone tapping wood. He reached for the shotgun beside the dresser and crept barefoot through the house, joints creaking louder than the floorboards. The house had been in his family for over a century, passed down from harder men than him, ranchers and sawmill workers, men who kept their heads down and their fences mended. Henry had been alone since. Dolores passed in '97. Stroke took her. On a Tuesday. She'd been hanging laundry, humming Patsy Cline, and by the time Henry made it out the back door, she was already gone, mouth open to the sky, arms outstretched like she was about to catch rain. He hadn't spoken much since. Not to anyone. The nearest town, Martindale, was 12 miles away, and he only drove in for feed or gas. Most folks thought he was already dead. The front door stood in shadow. Henry leveled the shotgun and opened it fast, barrel dash first, nothing, no wind. No rustling grass. Just the quiet hum of heat still bleeding from the earth, the Texas stars sharp. Above him, bright enough to read by. But at the edge of the porch, at the spot where the light faded into shadow, there was something. A single black feather, long, curved. He bent to pick it up and the smell hit him. Not rot. Not quite. More. Like burnt meat left in the sun, sharp and oily. He dropped the feather and slammed the door. Sleep didn't come after that dot the next morning. He found tracks. Not boot prints, not even animal. They looked like bird tracks, but too big, clawed, three-toed things that sank deep into the dry dirt around the porch. They led around the house and into the fields behind the barn, where the dead crops rattled in the breeze like bones in a box. That night, the knocking came again, twice, then again at dawn. He didn't answer this time. Just sat in the dark with the shotgun across his lap, staring at the door. By the fourth night, it wasn't knocking anymore. It was scratching. Long, slow scrapes across the wood. First at the door. Then the windows. Then the back of the house, near the room where Dolores used to sew quilts and watch her stories on the little TV. He could hear it moving, dragging something, claws maybe, or talons. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't even move. Just lay there, breathing shallow, eyes wide and white. Henry didn't sleep for 3 days. Then, on the 5th night, it spoke. "Henry," it said from the porch, voice low and too calm. "Let me in." It wasn't a man's voice. Not really. It was wrong, flat, like a recording. Like a tape someone had played backward and slowed down. There was no rhythm, no breath behind it. Henry sat frozen, lips whispering prayers he hadn't spoken since childhood. "I've come a long way," it said. Let me in. He didn't. The next morning the well was dry. Not just low, bone dry. Cracked earth at the bottom. The garden was dead, all of it. Tomatoes blackened on the vine, squash rotted from the inside out. The pecan tree out front was split down the middle like something had driven a stake into it. He drove to Martindale, or tried to. The truck wouldn't start. Battery gone, not dead, gone. The engine smelled like something had crawled inside and died. He popped the hood and found nothing but feathers. That afternoon, he took the shotgun and hiked down the back ridge to the neighbors, the Donnellys. 2 miles of rough pasture and old deer trails. The house was empty, doors wide open. No sign of struggle, but something was wrong. The furniture had been turned to face the walls. All of it, couch, chairs, even the TV. Every mirror was shattered. A stack of Polaroid photos sat on the kitchen table. Each photo was of the same thing. Black shapes standing in the field, far away. In the first photo, it was barely visible, just a smudge against the trees. In the last one, it was 10 feet from the porch. You could see the glint of eyes. Not red, just pale, like milk glass. Like fish eyes. Henry ran home before the sun. Dipped behind the trees. That night, he boarded the windows. Hammered planks across every entry. Poured salt in a circle around the house. He didn't know if it would help. but it felt like something to do, like action meant safety when it came. That night, it didn't knock. It screamed. Not a human scream. Not even close. It was the sound of something that had never known pain trying to describe it. It split the night wide open. The walls shook. The glass in the china cabinet exploded. Jasper howled once and then went still. Henry fired the shotgun. Through the front door. Nothing. But in the morning, he found blood on the porch. Black and thick like crude oil. It steamed in the cold air. The feathers kept appearing. In his bed, in his sink, inside the locked gun cabinet. Always slick with that same tar-colored blood. The smell was everywhere now. He couldn't eat. Couldn't drink. The air itself tasted wrong. He started hearing Dolores. First in dreams, then while he was awake. "Henry," she whispered, "you promised." He didn't know what he'd promised or when. But the voice came from inside the walls now. Sometimes he'd hear her laugh, soft and distant, like she was sitting in the sewing room again. Other times, she was crying. The field out back had changed. Something had dug up the earth. Huge trenches, too wide for any animal, too straight to be natural. The grass had turned white around the edges, brittle and pale, like frostbite. He watched from the attic as the thing stepped into the clearing on the seventh night. Tall as a man, but thin like a scarecrow, covered in feathers. Its face was a beak, jagged and cracked, the color of bone. It moved in pulses, flickering forward like bad film. It turned its head toward the house. "You said yes," it said. Henry doesn't remember saying yes, but he must have, because now he never sleeps. Never eats. He walks the fields barefoot, mumbling in a tongue he doesn't know. The birds no longer fly overhead. The coyotes are gone. The land is quiet. Sometimes, on dark nights, people passing through Martindale say they see a figure walking. The road, feathers falling in its wake. It knocks on doors, but never more than 3 times. If you open it, it leaves you something, a bone, a photo, a name. If you don't, it stays, and it waits.